This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
At least 60 people killed in yet another boat accident in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Incoming WTO Chief Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala warns developed countries against policies that would restrict access to COVID-19 vaccines by poorer nations. And South Africa asks the Serum Institute of India to take back COVID-19 vaccine doses after the drug proved ineffective against the local virus variant. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also ahead on the program. In business news, Egypt says it will not issue any more Eurobonds for the current fiscal year as it ramps up efforts to reduce its budget deficit. And in your sport, defending CAF Champions League winners Al Ahly set to face Sudan's Al Merreikh. At least 60 people have died following a boat accident in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Authorities have confirmed that a boat carrying 700 people capsized on the Congo River. The accident took place in the Mai-Ndombe province, located in the country's west. Around 300 survivors have been found so far, with over 200 missing. Well, Chris Ochamringa joins us now from Kinshasa with more on this tragic story. Chris, a tragic accident indeed there. What more details do you have?
Well, Beatrice, this accident happened in an area, a village known as Longola Ekoti in the western province of Mai-Ndombe. The DRC's Minister for Humanitarian Action said there were more than 700 people. The boat was traveling at night, and these people died. By Monday, authorities had recovered 60 bodies and 300 survivors. Search and rescue teams are still going on, trying to find other survivors and bodies. There are fears that very many more people could be dead. Authorities there are saying that there are more than 340 people who are missing. It's a very tragic accident that has been happening in the DRC. Beatrice?
Chris, boat accidents seem to be quite common in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Why exactly is this the reason, and what are authorities doing to address this recurring problem?
Well, the DRC Minister for Humanitarian Action said that the latest accident was caused by overloading. There were more than 700 people and cargo, charcoal, some animals there, and it capsized. It was traveling at night. So that is something that goes against the law in the DRC. A couple of years ago, the government banned all boat owners from traveling at night, but it has continued happening. And so one of the reasons is overloading. The other is many of these vessels are in very poor condition. And the third reason is the lack of enforcement by authorities. In 2019, the DRC president traveled to Lake Kivu, where there was a very serious accident. About 400 people were said to be missing. And the president said they're not going to allow people, to continue traveling without safety measures being enforced by authorities. But it has continued to happen, and it's because of corruption. Some of the people who are supposed to enforce these measures are given bribes by the boat owners, and they allow them to travel at night. And when these accidents happen, very many people die. So it's a thing that has been happening because the DRC is a very large country but has a very poor road network. So if one, say, for example, wants to travel from the eastern part, say Goma, to the west, Kinshasa, where we are based, you have to either fly, which is very expensive for most of the people, and so most of them opt to go by boat, which is cheaper, but then it's very risky because safety measures are not followed, and there's a lot of turbulence on some of these lakes. And so this has been happening for a very long time. Authorities have promised to crack the whip, but it hasn't happened so far. Beatrice?
Chris Ochamringa joining us there from Kinshasa. The World Trade Organization's incoming chief, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, is warning against vaccine nationalism. She says it will slow progress in ending the COVID-19 pandemic and could possibly affect the economic growth of all countries. Okonjo-Iweala says her top priority is to ensure the WTO does more to address the pandemic. She's urging members to speed up efforts to lift export restrictions, which slow the trade in medicines and other vital supplies. According to Okonjo-Iweala, studies have shown that the global economy would lose $9 trillion in potential output if poor countries were unable to get their populations vaccinated quickly. About half of the impact would be borne by rich countries. Okonjo-Iweala has also applauded the Biden administration for its contribution to the World Health Organization's efforts to ensure broader distribution of vaccines.
I hope that all leaders will recognize that this is a very peculiar and particular issue of the global commons, because no one is safe until everyone is safe. I know now everyone is saying it. I don't want it to become a routine saying, because it's absolutely true. I mean, vaccine nationalism at this time just will not pay, because the variants are coming. If other countries are not immunized, it will just be a blowback. So we have to think of working together in global solidarity. That's the first. On the public health side, it's unconscionable that people will be dying elsewhere and countries waiting in a queue when we have the technology.
Well, let's now cross to CGTN's Deji Badmus for more on the appointment of the former Nigerian Finance Minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala to the World Trade Organization. He joins us now from Lagos. Deji, good to see you there. How are Nigerians reacting to Ngozi Iweala's confirmation?
Well, Beatrice, I can tell you that it's a celebration here. The president has put out a statement congratulating her and saying he is not surprised at all and expressing optimism that she will deliver on the job. People are celebrating her. As a matter of fact, her appointment has united the country, united the political parties in this country. So you have congratulatory messages coming up now from both the ruling party and the opposition party. So the country is united at the moment, and everyone is happy about this. Beyond that, there's also an internet fashion challenge that has been created as well in her honor. It's tagged the hashtag Be Like Ngozi challenge. It requires people to actually replicate her traditional attire now. I mean, what she puts on all the time. That's the typical African print now known as Ankara here, and then the headgear as well. So that challenge is actually going on at the moment. It's just a sign of how important people think this is. And beyond that, on the street, people have also been speaking about this remarkable, what they consider remarkable achievement now from a Nigerian. Take a listen.
That position is long overdue when you take cognizance of what Okonjo-Iweala has put in this nation. I think 2 times finance minister is a record. Antecedents all through, being a managing director in the World Bank and the impact she had made.
Plus to Africa, and it's a big plus to Nigeria. It makes the Nigeria image to be more recognized in the world, and it gives us a voice.
Her achievements as a lady has actually made we young ladies to actually have the drive to do more. If she can do it, we all can do it.
Let me touch on the last soundbite there, Beatrice. It's actually what most ladies here have been saying, that that they're inspired by her achievement, they're inspired by this appointment, and that it's a clear sign that there's just no limit at all to what a female child now can achieve. So it's a huge celebration here. It's actually still sinking in, and people are extremely happy. They're wishing her well. And of course, not just Nigeria, across the continent, everyone is celebrating. So Well, of course, the most difficult task will begin when she starts work on the 1st of March. Of course, quite difficult road ahead, but everyone is optimistic that Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala can actually deliver, because she has always delivered in other positions she held. Finance minister in the country twice, she delivered. As the managing director of the World Bank, she delivered. So everyone believes there's no reason why she won't do well on the job this time. Back to you, Beatrice.
All right, Deji Badmus for us there in Lagos. And it's a historic moment indeed, not only for Africa, but also for the World Trade Organization. We still have more on this, and I'm now joined by Michael Sudakasa. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Africa Business Group. Michael, thank you for joining us on the program. A huge responsibility and high expectations there on Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. What challenges lie ahead?
Well, I think the fact that she's coming in the middle of a pandemic is going to be a huge one. I think a second one will be that she's the first female head of the organization. And, you know, those changes sometimes take a little while to come into to have everybody comfortable. But, you know, I think that it's a historic time for Africa. It's a historic time for the World Trade Organization. And we're also on the continent excited about her ascension, because we've also just in January launched the African Continental Free Trade Area. And the 6 objectives of the 6 objectives of the organization, the WTO, is to ensure that developing countries really get the full benefit of that organ. So now we've got a perfect platform within which she can work and help us. So we're all eagerly awaiting her tenure, and having her start bringing some of the problem-solving skills that she so adeptly proved that she had when she was with the World Bank and also with the government of Nigeria to the world trade stage.
So Okonjo-Iweala has warned against vaccine nationalism in the fight against COVID-19. How significant is that, given that the WTO recently shot down a proposal to waive intellectual property rights for vaccines?
I think it's really, she has a platform to bring to a light in a way that very few others can, potential injustices in global trade. This issue that has been, again, something that developing countries have faced for some time, with global pharmaceutical companies really dominating global healthcare, has been a challenge. And so I don't think that everybody will roll over and say, just because she's making a point of it, we will change everything. But I think that she can apply enough pressure and mobilize enough interest so that these things will change. Now, will that happen in the next 6 months, which is when we need it to happen? Maybe, but I think the fact that she's raising it will get, and it's pointed out that the new president of the United States has really changed tack and is trying to make sure that there's more of an egalitarian dissemination of the vaccines. That pressure will ramp up. And so I think that by virtue of her raising it, she's raising it even before she's in office. Once she's in office, she can see if there are other levers that can be pulled. But I think it's what's needed. And so I think she will definitely have an impact. We may need to revisit the whole area of intellectual property rights. You've got countries like India where there are generics that are available, and there's a tussle. The continent itself, I know the UN Economic Commission for Africa has done research recently on how pharmaceutical products can be produced on the continent. This will be an issue that will be further discussed in her first 5 years of office, for sure.
All right, Michael Sudakasa joining us there via Zoom. Thank you. Former South African President Jacob Zuma could be facing jail time. This comes after Zuma defied an order to appear before court. The Deputy Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, is leading an inquiry into allegations of corruption committed during Zuma's time in power. Zondo wants the court to jail Zuma over contempt of court. The former South African president stopped participating in the inquiry in November. Officials brought the matter to the Constitutional Court, which ordered him to appear before it. An Ebola vaccination drive has started in the DRC. Health workers in the eastern city of Butembo were first to be vaccinated. The World Health Organization says 1,200 doses of the Ebola vaccine were delivered on Friday. This comes as new cases of the virus have been reported in Butembo. Guinea has also declared an Ebola outbreak. The West African country has confirmed at least 5 deaths. The World Health Organization is urging government to contain misinformation.
WHO is working closely with health authorities in both countries to engage with the affected communities to enhance trust and acceptance. Ebola and COVID-19 are two very different diseases. Both thrive on misinformation and mistrust, but both can be stopped with proven public health measures, engaged communities, accurate information, and vaccines.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. South Africa asks the Serum Institute of India to take back COVID-19 vaccine doses after the drug proved ineffective against the local virus variant. And Myanmar's military cuts off the internet for a second time as protesters demand Aung San Suu Kyi's release.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba, Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The World Health Organization says the number of weekly new COVID cases has fallen by almost half this year. The figure last week was 2.6 million. That's a drop from more than 5 million in the first full week of the year. New infections have also declined for 5 weeks in a row. The organization's chief, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, says this means that simple public health measures work even as the virus mutates. He also called for expanding vaccine production and equal distribution. Well, South Africa is looking to send back 1 million doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. Authorities are asking the Serum Institute of India to take back the doses. The company is producing the AstraZeneca vaccine and had sent the doses to South Africa. This comes following a small study that showed that the AstraZeneca vaccine provided limited protection against South Africa's COVID-19 variant. The country paused its vaccination rollout campaign following the study. Meanwhile, South Africa's school year has finally begun. The reopening of public schools was delayed by 2 weeks to allow for some respite from the second wave of COVID-19 infections. The 2020 academic calendar was severely disrupted by the pandemic, but education stakeholders hope this year will be much smoother. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
Millions of South African children made their way to school as the 2021 academic year finally got underway. It was especially exciting for pupils in Katlehong Township, who were greeted with newly built facilities and no longer have to learn in crowded classrooms.
Because of the new building, our community is so excited. We had to do our plenary prior so that we allocate learners and teachers as well, because we were squashed in a small environment, in a small classrooms. So now we have to distribute learners equally. So currently we're having 41 classrooms that are occupied.
Strict COVID-19 protocols such as hand sanitizing, social distancing and wearing of masks remain in place, as educators wasted no time in getting started on the curriculum.
In preparation of today, even some of them, they came yesterday. I didn't expect them on a Sunday, but they came to prepare their classrooms so that learners, they can be ready the first day to learn. And with the staff that I'm having, they are very enthusiastic.
Parents, meanwhile, are grateful the 2-month-long break is over and their little ones are learning again.
I'm feeling happy because this thing of corona is beating us, but only God knows how it's going to go on. But I'm so happy with their back to school today.
I hope inside the class they are still making the exercises because they don't allow us to get inside as a parents to check a social distance in the class. But I hope everything is complete as today the school they are opening. And I'm happy for my grandson because I bring my grandson today.
In the Gauteng province alone, 2.3 million children started the 2021 academic year. Just a few hiccups around placements were reported.
According to information about disposal, currently everything went very well. Though we had one issue in Tshwane West where parents went to our district office to seek, clarity regarding the placements. There are those that are not satisfied that we gave them placement in, alternative schools, which they say those schools are far. Some are saying those schools, it's not what they preferred.
There's much relief here as children are finally back in school. The hope now is that there will be no major disruptions to the schooling calendar as seen in 2020. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Nigeria has approved the release of nearly $17 million to build oxygen plants across the country. Part of the funds would also go into reviving collapsed oxygen production facilities. This is to tackle the shortage of oxygen supply in Nigerian medical facilities as the nation battles to contain the soaring cases of COVID-19. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports.
Francis Momodu is a medical oxygen vendor in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. He has spent the past 7 years supplying oxygen to hospitals and more recently COVID-19 isolation centers. The small vendor's weekly supply more than doubled since the pandemic started, and demand has increased lately following the second wave of COVID-19. But recently, Francis has been unable to meet his customers' demands. The product has been scarce and prices have gone up by over 150%.
We used to refill our oxygen gas at Iduyad, but their machine went bad and the oxygen demand was too high. People were even coming from other states. Sometimes we had to wait for 2 weeks before we could make a purchase.
Oxygen is at the heart of healthcare services delivery, especially amid a pandemic that affects the respiratory system. But a shortage of oxygen has led to many deaths following the second wave of the coronavirus, which doctors say is deadlier.
Since December to now, we've seen more and more severe cases, unlike what was observed before the second wave. And that's the reason why oxygen dependency, the requirement of these patients have enormously increased. The capacity for us to be able to cope with this is what is not yet there, and responsible for mortality that's been recorded.
In a move aimed at resolving the shortage, the Nigerian government is set to build 38 new oxygen plants across the country. It would cost $16.33 million. The process may take another year or two before completion.
The intervention must come early for the patient to survive. It's not when all the cascade of this event had occurred that you are now coming back to say oxygen. Oxygen must be given as early as possible. But my fear personally is that when this, making the pronouncement at the middle of pandemic, when will this provision be eventually come? When will this oxygen plant will be available? We have to think of the gestation period of a contract process in Nigeria. That may take us 2-3 months. We don't know. Possibly COVID will have plateaued.
Medical experts say that about 10 out of every 50 COVID-19 patients would need daily oxygen treatment. Health workers have been overwhelmed by the increase in coronavirus cases and have advised citizens to take precautionary measures in order to stop the spread of the virus. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
200,000 doses of the Chinese-developed Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccine has arrived in Zimbabwe. At a signing ceremony, China and Zimbabwe certified the delivery. The vaccines were donated by China and are the first batch to arrive in the country. President Emerson Mnangagwa, as well as China's ambassador to Zimbabwe, attended the signing ceremony.
I accept this vaccine donation on behalf of the Zimbabwean people. Let me express my appreciation to China for always being a steadfast partner to the people of Zimbabwe. Even as you battled the vaccine on your own shores in China, you never neglected to lend a helping hand to Zimbabwe. This consistent display of our unwavering partnership is a strong evidence of the strength of our bilateral relations, close collaboration, and enduring ties between our two peoples. It also testifies of the commendable leadership role that the People's Republic of China has continued to play in global efforts to combat the spread of the virus. Your Excellency, as I conclude, may I ask you to convey my gratitude to my dear brother, His Excellency President Xi Jinping, for this donation. Let him know that we are grateful that yet again the sisterly People's Republic of China has demonstrated its solidarity by being the first to partner with us in the effort to vaccinate our people. We are confident that this will enable us to enter a new dawn in our fight against this global pandemic, the COVID-19.
In Myanmar, the military has cut off the internet for a second time since it took over power, blocking access Monday night. Protesters are keeping up their demand for the release of Aung San Suu Kyi. The ousted leader is set to appear in court via video link on Wednesday. The military has charged her with illegally importing electronic devices. A United Nations envoy has spoken to the military leadership, warning of severe consequences for any harsh response to protesters. Catherine Drew reports.
For a 10th day in a row, protesters took to the streets in cities across Myanmar, defying an increased military presence. In the main city of Yangon, they surrounded the headquarters of Aung San Suu Kyi's NLD party, demanding her release. Staff inside waved their support. Aung San Suu Kyi's detention expired on Monday. However, her lawyers said she had been detained for a further 2 days and would appear in court in the capital Naypyidaw via video link on Wednesday. They said they had not been given a chance to meet her or the other detained politicians.
We will try to meet Aung San Suu Kyi again, but for now they are not here. They are not allowed to be here, and there is also no video conferencing available either. So there will be no opportunities to meet them at all.
Aung San Suu Kyi faces charges which include possession of unlawful communication devices, walkie-talkies used by her security staff. Protesters voiced their demands despite a warning that long sentences and fines will apply to those who obstruct or incite hatred towards the military powers.
Mother Suu Kyi will face charges in court according to their laws soon, but she has been under that kind of action by the military since 1988, and as she is a representation of justice in the country, I believe that she can get through it very well.
Police have deployed water cannon and fired guns to break up crowds, like this demonstration on Sunday in Myakina, the capital of northern Kachin state. It's not known if live ammunition or rubber bullets were used. However, so far, security services have not launched violent crackdowns seen in past unrest. Tensions had been building since the NLD overwhelmingly won November's general election. Without evidence, the military alleged voter fraud and demanded a rerun. Military leader General Min Aung Hlaing has said new elections will be held with what he called a reformed election commission. Meanwhile, a year-long state of emergency has been imposed. Protests on the streets, however, look set to continue. Catherine Drew, CGTN.
Every year, the Chinese community in Cape Town holds a festive celebration to usher in the Chinese New Year. This year, though social distancing requirements due to the COVID-19 pandemic meant the celebrations were marked differently. It was a virtual event in which the people of Cape Town and the Chinese community showed that not even physical distancing could stop them from celebrating their diverse cultures and mutual friendship. Renee Delcam reports.
A year ago, the Chinese community and the people of Cape Town gathered for the traditional Chinese New Year celebrations. But things have changed dramatically since then, and this year's virtual New Year festivities were less about socializing and more about social distancing.
The Chinese Consul General to Cape Town, Lin Xing, reflected on the success of the Chinese people in overcoming the difficulties of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Chinese donations of PPE to help locals in South Africa. He wished the Chinese community in South Africa strength and good health in 2021, the lunar year of the ox.
Last year was a challenging year with the COVID-19 pandemic, and while we are not yet out of the woods, let us look forward with hope and be encouraged about the possibilities and growth that lies ahead. The Chinese New Year takes on a deeper significance this year of overcoming and succeeding a battle which continues in many parts of the world. The Chinese community is an important part of Cape Town's diversity, and we are very pleased that you have made this beautiful city your home.
Welcome to Cape Town. Enjoy the party.
The University of the Western Cape recently handed over a donation of PPE from the city of Qinghua in China to the city of Cape Town to help curb the spread of COVID-19. And many locals and members of the Chinese community agree. Despite pandemic lockdowns, travel restrictions and physical distancing, the friendship and ties between South Africa and China are as strong as ever. Renee Delcam, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. Egypt says it will not issue any more Eurobonds for the current fiscal year as it ramps up efforts to reduce its budget deficit.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Egypt has announced that it will not issue any more Eurobonds for the current fiscal year that ends in July. The announcement comes days after Cairo sold $3.75 billion worth of bonds last week at the international market, aimed at partially reducing the budget deficit. From Cairo, Yasser Hakim examines the measures Egypt is taking to minimize its debt profile.
Egypt has been frequently tapping the Eurobond market in the last few years, including the highest bond sale in its history of $5 billion that was raised in August 2020. According to the North African State's central bank, the long-term international bonds are gradually replacing Egyptian pound-dominated treasury bills to avoid crowding out private investors.
Egypt prefers foreign bonds over local bills for several reasons. First, because they have a long-term repayment plan that could stretch 40 years with lower interest rates than the local debt, while the maximum period for treasury securities is only 20 years. Second, it's a confidence-building measure. Success in bond issuances sends a strong message to foreign investors that Egypt is safe to invest in, whether projects or in the stock market.
And the Minister of Finance, Mohammed Maid, confirmed the importance of this borrowing mechanism.
The role of the state is that we manage to solve issues partially through bonds. There was a shortage of hard currency, but we now have hard currency. There was a problem of continuous deficit, but we solved the deficit problem. There were issues with our infrastructure, electricity, roads, transport and gas, but we have managed to solve all of them.
The government says last week's $3.75 billion Eurobond sales to cover part of its $8 billion budget deficit will be the last for this fiscal year 2020-2021 that ends in July.
Minister Mohammed Maid made this decision because Egypt has achieved its target of foreign currency issuances for the year. The state budget has allowed for a $7 billion bond sales, which was covered. The latest $3.75 billion Eurobond sales was oversubscribed, but the government only needed the amount it collected.
Officials are hoping there will be a revival in the tourism industry in the second half of 2021, and that will help to pay the country's next year budget deficit from the tourism revenue rather than from issuing more debt. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Nigeria is set for another increase in the price of petrol as crude oil price edges closer to $65 per barrel. The government announced the removal of a fuel subsidy last March following a market-based pricing regime for petrol. Labour unions in the country have often clashed with the government on several occasions over the issue, as CGTN's Deji Badmos now reports from Lagos.
It's a paradox for Nigeria that the rise in crude oil price is both a source of joy and disagreements. The country needs higher crude prices to show up its revenue, but with about 90% of its domestic refined petrol imported, anytime the price of crude oil goes up, the price of refined petrol rises as well. Until March last year, the government was fully subsidizing the price of petrol. With the subsidy now gone and the price of crude rising, officials are warning of an impending hike in fuel price.
Today, the NNPC is taking a big hit from this. We all know that there is no provision in the budget for subsidy. And so, somewhere down the line, I believe that the NNPC cannot continue to take this blow. There is no way, because there is no provision for it. So as a country, let us take the benefits of the higher crude oil prices, and I hope that we'll also be ready to take a little pain on the other side, on the side of higher product prices.
Labour unions in the country have warned that they would reject any form of petrol price increase. The government has opened talks with them to persuade them to change their position. In the public, the issue is dividing opinions.
This policy is a good policy implemented at the worst possible time they can. We all know what COVID has done to the global economy and to Nigeria. We're in a recession. For me, what government should do if they would be willing to eat humble pie is to accept that they've made a mistake, is to reintroduce subsidy. So it's not really too unrealistic to ask government to suspend this, their so-called deregulation policy for now, for a 1 or 2 year window, allow the refining sector to blossom, and then deregulate fully in the true sense of it.
The reality is that the government does not even have the wherewithal to continue to subsidize the consumption of petroleum products. And most importantly, the fact that we subsidize petroleum products also means that we are not able to stimulate the refining industry in the country. So over time, you realize that, look, a lot of resources that should have been spent on critical sectors of the economy like education, healthcare, was actually spent on subsidizing petroleum products.
For now, all eyes are on those talks between the government and labor unions. If the government had its way, then petrol pump price will be adjusted upwards pretty soon. But if there's a stalemate, then the country might as well just begin to prepare for another round of general strike. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
In Kenya, swarms of desert locusts have so far been reported in 15 counties. The locust infestation is causing anxious moments for locals in Laikipia County. Let's take a look.
This is what people living in Kenya's Laikipia County have been forced to do for some time now. They've been screaming and striking at desert locusts as they try to chase the pest away.
We are even tired. We have been fighting them and we have been shouting at them until we are now tired. Some of us are even losing our voices and others have become exhausted just dealing with them.
Maurice Kisio is a chief within the county. He says he has been receiving new reports about the sighting of locusts in the area.
This is very dangerous to our community because it will lead to drought later. There won't be a good harvest as a result. Also, our livestock won't have foliage to feed on, and hence we expect a famine later.
The chief says he has informed the Locust Control Center based inside the Lower Conservancy of the struggle Laikipia residents are enduring. The Conservancy has since begun aerial spraying operations targeting the pests.
Around 5:30 we get up before sunrise and get the plane ready, and then I wait for the spotter plane, which is the helicopter. He goes, make sure the swarm is sprayable. Challenges here, we have met are just a lot of people around the swarm, so it's hard to spray.
The daily spraying that the team has been conducting has been a success. It has reduced locust swarms to 3 on average, from the usual 10 to 12 separate swarms they were dealing with last month. Njamungai, CGTN.
Elsewhere, Tanzania's earnings from travel dropped by 59% in December 2020 to $1.06 billion. This resulted in a decline in overall earnings from export of goods and services by $849.3 million. Before the global pandemic, tourism was Tanzania's leading source of forex, earning $2.5 billion in 2019. That's according to data from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism. The value of traditional exports also dropped by $8.8 billion in December 2020 from $9.65 billion in December 2019. The central bank has attributed the decrease to declines in export values of low production of coffee and cotton and reduced volumes and prices of tea and sisal. The Kenya Flour Council says high taxes, lack of cargo flights and poor weather in Europe are weighing down on Kenyan flour exporters' outlook for business this Valentine's season. This came as the council projected that the sector, which was hard hit by the effects of the pandemic, would recover by the end of the year. According to the council, farmers are exporting only 75% of their produce due to lack of flights and limited space. Kenya exported 170,000 tons of flours in 2020. Europe accounts for nearly 70% of the East African nations' cut flour exports. Coronavirus restrictions had, however, slashed daily orders by half, threatening thousands of jobs in the country. Well, the European Union says China became its biggest trading partner last year, outstripping the United States. Both imports and exports between China and the bloc increased despite the pandemic. European imports from China grew by nearly 6% to more than 380 billion euros, and exports grew by more than 2% to over 200 billion euros. Meanwhile, European trade with the US saw a decline. Here's my colleague Chui Hui Yao with more details.
The figures came in on Monday from Eurostat, the statistical service of EU. They showed both China's exports and imports have been increasing last year, up by 5.6% and 2.2% from respectively. That tallies with China's official numbers, which show bilateral trade grew by over 5% in 2020 to nearly 4,500 billion yuan or nearly 600 billion euros. As far as what's being traded, the EU's mostly purchased industrial and consumer goods, machinery and equipment, footwear and clothing from China, while China mainly bought machinery, motor vehicles, aircraft, and chemicals from the EU. Now, a lot of these products are transported by train. The number of China-Europe freight trains has continued to surge, rising by over 50% last year to a total of 12,400. And despite the impact of COVID-19, China overtook the U.S. as EU's largest trading partner in the third quarter last year. The statistics show EU's trade with the U.S. saw substantial decline in both directions, with exports and imports dropping by 8.2% and 13.2% respectively. Now, these results speak for the strong resilience and importance of China-EU ties. That is according to Zhang Min, head of the Chinese mission to the EU. Last year, the two sides wrapped up negotiations on the China-EU bilateral investment treaty. The announcement came 2 days before the end of the year and locked in a deal that had been dragging since 2014 after going through 35 rounds of negotiations. The deal has not been officially signed yet, as legal texts are still being hammered out, but it covers three main areas: market access, fair competition, and sustainable development. China is set to open up sectors including automobiles, air transport, and private hospitals to Europe, while Europe will give Chinese investors more access in renewable energy. Analysts predict the deal will provide tremendous opportunities for both Chinese and European companies, and it will help to ensure a level playing field.
Let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. Defending CAF Champions League winners are likely set to face Sudan's Al Merreikh.
Every year, approximately 400 million tons of plastic is produced, and about 40% of that is single use.
79% of that is not recycled, it's not turned into energy, it's just going into landfill or into the environment in some way.
And each year, it is estimated that between 5 to 8 million tons of plastic makes it into our oceans.
When it comes to the environmental cost of plastic, the most obvious one is the entanglement issue, because of plastic getting into food webs, so animals eating plastic.
With the global focus on plastic pollution and my eldest son Tristan studying marine biology, I wanted to get involved and see for myself the true extent of the pollution in our region.
We're on our way. Finally the journey starts.
I decided that we should go on a voyage off the beaten track, a journey that focuses on the impact of plastics in our oceans.
The sea gods are good to us and we have reasonable sailing conditions.
Africa Live. Find your voice.